I died at 35 in a hospital corridor, collapsed from exhaustion after working a 16-hour shift at my third job. My husband Eric wasn't there. He was at a business conference in Paris with his colleague Amanda. The conference I'd paid for with the overtime money I'd earned while he focused on his startup. The doctors said it was a massive heart attack brought on by chronic stress and exhaustion. What they didn't say, but what I knew in those final moments of consciousness, was that I'd worked myself to death funding my husband's dreams while he built a life with another woman. My name is Catherine Way, and for 12 years I sacrificed everything for my husband's success. I dropped out of my master's program to support us financially. I worked multiple jobs so he could pursue his business ventures without the stress of employment. I took care of his aging parents while he traveled for networking opportunities. I postponed having children because he said we needed to wait until his company was profitable. What I didn't know until 2 weeks before I died was that every sacrifice I made was actually funding his relationship with Amanda. The startup money went to her apartment rent. The networking trips were romantic getaways. The business lunches were dates. The late nights at the office were spent at her place. When I finally confronted him after finding explicit messages on his laptop, Eric had looked at me with genuine confusion and said, "Why are you being so selfish? You knew building this company required sacrifices. Amanda understands the vision in ways you never could. She supports my dreams without making everything about money and security." I'd been too shocked to respond, too exhausted to fight. I'd just gone to work the next day, pushed myself through another brutal shift, and collapsed in that hospital corridor. When I opened my eyes again, I was 23 years old, sitting in a coffee shop across from Eric Chun on what would have been our first anniversary date in my original timeline. Except this was before we got married. This was the moment he was about to propose. "Catherine, these past 2 years have been incredible," Eric was saying, his hand moving toward his jacket pocket where I knew the ring was waiting. "You've been so supportive of my dreams, so understanding about my need to focus on building something meaningful. I can't imagine doing this life with anyone else." In my previous timeline, I'd been so moved by these words. I'd cried when he proposed. I'd said yes immediately, feeling chosen and special and loved. Now I heard what he was actually saying. "You've been so useful. You've asked for nothing while giving everything. I need someone who'll keep doing that while I pursue what I actually want." "Eric," I said before he could pull out the ring, "I need to tell you something." "What is it?" "I've been thinking about our future, and I've realized I need to make some changes in my life." His hand paused. "What kind of changes?" "I'm going back to school. I've been accepted into the graduate program at MIT. I'm starting next semester." Eric's expression shifted from romantic anticipation to confusion. "MIT? But that's in Boston. We're in California." "I know. It's a great opportunity for me, and I need to take it." "What about us?" "What about us?" "Catherine, I was about to." He stopped himself. "I thought we were building a life together. I thought you supported my work." "I do support your work. But I also need to support my own dreams. I can't put my life on hold indefinitely while you figure out yours." "You're not putting your life on hold. We're partners. We're building something together." "Are we?" "Because from where I'm sitting, I work 2 jobs to pay our rent while you attend networking events and business lunches. I come home exhausted and cook dinner while you stay out late at strategy sessions. I've postponed my education, my career, my goals. And for what? So you can pursue yours without inconvenience." Eric's face flushed. "I didn't realize you felt that way. You never said anything." "I'm saying something now. I'm going to MIT. If you want to continue this relationship, it'll have to be long distance. And I won't be working 2 jobs to support you from across the country." "So you're just abandoning me? Right when my company is about to take off." "Your company has been about to take off for 2 years. Meanwhile, my life has been on pause. I thought you believed in me." "I believe in you. But I also believe in myself. And I'm choosing myself this time." Eric stared at me like I was speaking a foreign language. In our original timeline, I'd never contradicted him, never prioritized my needs over his, never questioned the dynamic where I sacrificed and he benefited. "I don't understand," he said finally. Did something happen? Did someone say something to you? I just woke up, I said, which was more true than he'd ever know. Eric left the coffee shop angry and confused. He called me 17 times that night. I didn't answer. The next morning, he showed up at my apartment with flowers and the ring box. Catherine, I'm sorry I reacted badly yesterday. I was just surprised. But I've been thinking, and I realize you're right. You should pursue your dreams too. We can make it work long distance. Can we? Of course. I love you. Distance won't change that. And you'll support yourself financially while I'm in grad school? I won't be able to send you money or cover your expenses. His enthusiasm faltered slightly. Well, I mean, we're partners. We'd still help each other out. How would you help me out, Eric? Specifically, I'd be emotionally supportive. I'd visit when I could. You'd expect me to pay for those visits. You'd expect me to cover your expenses when you came to Boston. You'd expect me to send money when you had emergencies that prevented you from finding actual employment. That's not fair. You're making me sound like I'm using you. Aren't you? I'm building something. I'm creating value, pursuing a vision. On my money, using my labor, while I defer my own dreams indefinitely. Eric's mask slipped completely. So what, you're just done? You're throwing away 2 years because you've suddenly decided to be selfish. I'm deciding to have boundaries. If that seems selfish to you, it's because you've benefited from me not having any. I can't believe this. After everything he stopped. After everything you've what? Please finish that sentence. Tell me what you've done for me that I should be grateful for. Eric had no answer. Because in 2 years of our relationship, he'd done nothing but take while framing his taking as my privilege to give. I'll be moving to Boston in 6 weeks, I said. If you want to continue this relationship on equal terms, where we both pursue our goals and support each other genuinely, I'm open to that conversation. But I won't be your ATM and emotional support system while you do whatever you want. After he left, I sat in my apartment feeling lighter than I had in years. In my previous timeline, I'd said yes to that proposal. I'd married Eric, dropped out of school, worked myself to death supporting his vision, while he built a life with Amanda. This time, I was choosing differently. Over the next 2 weeks, Eric tried every manipulation tactic I remembered from our 12-year marriage. He cried and said I was his anchor, the only person who believed in him. He got angry and accused me of being unsupportive during his most vulnerable time. He love-bombed me with constant attention and promises to change. He gave me the silent treatment to punish me for setting boundaries. None of it worked. I'd lived through 12 years of his manipulation. I'd died because of his selfishness. I knew every trick, every emotional button he tried to push, every guilt trip he attempted to send me on. You're different, he said one night when I refused to back down on moving to Boston. You used to be so understanding, so flexible. Now you're rigid and selfish. I used to be so accommodating, you mean? So willing to sacrifice myself for your comfort. And you mistook that for love instead of recognizing it as me having no boundaries. We're supposed to sacrifice for the people we love. Sacrifice is supposed to be mutual. What have you sacrificed for me? Again, he had no answer. The relationship ended 2 weeks before I left for Boston. Eric showed up at my apartment one last time. Not with flowers or apologies, but with Amanda. I want you to meet someone, he said. And there she was, young, ambitious, already successful in her own finance career. Everything I'd have been if I hadn't spent my 20s funding his dreams. Amanda and I have been working together on the business plan, Eric said. She's investing in the company, bringing her expertise in corporate finance. She believes in the vision. I looked at Amanda, 24 years old, bright-eyed, wearing expensive clothes that she'd clearly purchased with her own money. Does she know you expected me to fund your lifestyle while you pursued this vision? Eric's face reddened. That's not, we were partners. Does she know you've never held a job for more than 3 months? That you spent 2 years living off my income while claiming to build a company that has no product, no revenue, no actual business plan beyond networking and vision? Amanda was watching Eric with new attention now. Catherine is just bitter, Eric said quickly. She's upset that I've moved on. Moved on? We broke up 2 weeks ago. I turned to Amanda. He's going to ask you to invest in his company. Don't do it. He has no business acumen, no follow-through, and no intention of actually working. He's looking for someone to fund his lifestyle while he plays entrepreneur. That's not true, Eric protested. Amanda knows I'm brilliant, that I just need the right support to. To what? What exactly is your business plan, Eric? What product or service are you actually selling? He couldn't answer. Because there was no business. There never had been. There was just Eric's belief that he was destined for greatness, and other people's responsibility to fund that belief until it magically manifested. Amanda left with me, actually. We got coffee, and I told her everything. The 2 jobs I'd worked, the education I'd deferred, the years I'd wasted supporting a man who'd never had any intention of supporting me back. Thank you, she said afterward. I almost invested $50,000. He would have gone through it in 6 months and asked for more. Did he ever pay you back? For all the money you spent on him? He didn't see it as debt. He saw it as my investment in our shared future. Except the future was only shared in terms of my sacrifice, never in terms of my benefit. 2 months into my graduate program at MIT, I was thriving. The coursework was challenging but energizing. My professors recognized my potential. I was making connections, building a real foundation for my career, living the life I'd given up in my previous timeline. Eric called me 3 times during those first months. Each call followed the same pattern. Things were hard, he was struggling, he'd made a mistake letting me go. Couldn't I help him just this once? I said no each time. The 4th call came from an unknown number. I answered out of curiosity. Catherine? It's Linda, Eric's mother. In my previous timeline, I'd taken care of Linda through her cancer treatment, paying her medical bills, driving her to appointments, essentially becoming her caregiver while Eric claimed to be too busy with his business. Hello, Linda. I'm calling because Eric told me you 2 broke up, and I wanted to reach out. He's been having such a hard time, and I know you care about him. Maybe you could talk to him, help him get back on track. I'm in graduate school in Boston. I don't have time to manage Eric's life. But he's struggling so much. And you were always so good at taking care of him, helping him stay focused. That was the problem, Linda. I was taking care of him instead of him taking care of himself. He's a grown man. He needs to figure out his own life. That's very cold, Catherine. Family takes care of each other. I'm not family. Eric and I aren't married. We're not even together. But you were going to be married. Eric told me he was planning to propose. You must have known that. I did know. And I said no. Silence on the line. Then, why would you say no? Eric is a wonderful man with such potential. Potential isn't the same as actual achievement. And I'm not obligated to fund someone else's potential while sacrificing my own. I thought you loved him. I did love him. But I love myself more. And that means not setting myself on fire to keep him warm. Linda hung up on me. 2 days later, Eric's father called with a similar message. Then Eric's sister. Then his college roommate. All of them with the same script. Eric was struggling. I'd been so good for him. Couldn't I reconsider? I blocked all their numbers. 6 months into grad school, I met James Park at a research symposium. He was a PhD candidate in computer science, brilliant and driven, with actual accomplishments rather than just potential. We started dating slowly. I was cautious, watchful for signs of the dynamic I'd had with Eric. The expectation that I'd sacrifice while he benefited. But James was different. He paid for dates. He respected my time and boundaries. He had his own career, his own goals, his own life that didn't require me to fund or manage it. You're very independent, he observed one evening after I'd insisted on splitting a dinner bill. I learned the hard way that dependency breeds resentment. Bad relationship in your past? Something like that. James didn't push for details. He just accepted my boundaries and built trust slowly, through consistent action rather than empty promises. A year into my program, I was offered a prestigious research fellowship that came with a generous stipend. I called my parents to share the news. That's wonderful, Catherine, my mother said. We're so proud of you. Have you heard from Eric recently? My father asked. No. Why? He came by the house last week. Asked if we knew how to reach you. Said he had something important to discuss. What did you tell him? We said you'd moved on and didn't want contact. He seemed upset. Good. That means the boundary is working. A week later, Eric somehow got my email address and sent me a long message. It was a masterpiece of manipulation. Apologies mixed with guilt trips, acknowledgement of past mistakes combined with requests for help, claims of personal growth alongside expectations that I'd support his new venture. I deleted it without responding. 2 years into grad school, I was succeeding beyond anything I'd imagined in my previous timeline. I had published papers. I had a relationship with James that was genuinely equal and supportive. I had my own money, my own goals, my own life that belonged entirely to me. Eric appeared at a conference where I was presenting my research. I saw him in the audience during my presentation. He looked older, tired, less polished than I remembered. After my talk, he approached me in the lobby. Catherine, you were amazing up there. I always knew you were brilliant. What are you doing here, Eric? I heard you were presenting. I wanted to see you, to talk to you. It's been 2 years. And I've been thinking about everything that happened between us. About how I took you for granted. How I didn't appreciate what I had. I've changed, Catherine. I've grown. I'm not that selfish person anymore. I studied his face, looking for genuine remorse. I saw calculation instead. What do you want, Eric? I want another chance. I want to prove to you that I can be the partner you deserve. I have a real business plan now, real investors, real potential. Stop. What? You haven't changed at all. You're still the same person who expects others to fund your potential while you do nothing to fund theirs. You're just using different words. That's not fair. I've worked really hard on this new venture. Have you worked hard? Or have you been networking and pitching while someone else handles the actual labor? Eric's expression shifted. There's someone helping with the operational side, but that's normal business structure. Who's funding it? I have investors. Who, Eric? Specifically, Amanda's company provided seed funding, and there's a small business loan, and my parents contributed. So other people's money. Again. That's how startups work. No, that's how your version of startups work. You find people to fund your vision while you avoid any actual risk or labor yourself. I can't believe you're still this bitter. I'm not bitter. I'm clear-sighted. And I see you exactly for what you are. Someone who feels entitled to other people's sacrifice without offering anything real in return. I offered you love. You offered me exploitation disguised as partnership. There's a difference. Eric's face flushed with anger. You know what? You were never good enough for me anyway. You were always just a placeholder until I found someone who really understood my vision. Amanda gets it. She believes in me. Amanda, whose company provided seed funding? I'm sure she does get it. She gets that she's funding your lifestyle again. We're partners. Equal partners. Does she know about me? About the 2 years I supported you financially while you built nothing? Eric's silence was answer enough. Tell her, I said. Tell her the truth about how you operate. Give her the choice I never had because I didn't know what I was signing up for. I walked away from him, from that conversation, from the last remnant of guilt or obligation I'd felt about ending our relationship. James was waiting for me outside the conference center. Was that him? Your ex? That was him. He looked angry. He's always angry when he doesn't get what he wants. Which is everything for nothing. James took my hand. I'm glad you got away from him. So am I. 3 years after our breakup, I completed my master's degree with highest honors and was accepted into a PhD program with full funding. James and I moved in together, splitting rent equally, building a life that was genuinely shared. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Eric's startup had failed when Amanda's company pulled funding after discovering he'd been using business money for personal expenses. Eric had moved back in with his parents and was working at his father's company in a job he'd been given purely through nepotism. Linda called me one more time, from a new number I hadn't blocked. Catherine, I know you don't want to hear from us, But I'm calling because I'm sick again. The cancer came back. And Eric is just so overwhelmed with everything, and I thought maybe you could help. Linda, I'm sorry you're sick. Truly. But Eric is a 30-year-old man. He needs to take care of his own mother instead of expecting his ex-girlfriend to do it. But you were always so good at managing everything. Because Eric refused to manage anything himself. And you enabled that by always finding someone else to pick up his slack. How can you be so cruel? I'm sick, and you're refusing to help. I'm refusing to set myself on fire to keep Eric warm. That's not cruel. That's self-preservation. He really loved you, you know. No, he didn't. He loved what I provided. There's a difference. I hung up and blocked the number. James found me crying on the couch afterward. Not from guilt or regret, but from exhaustion at how persistent the manipulation was. How Eric's entire family had been weaponized to try to pull me back into the role of his caretaker and ATM. They'll never stop, I told James. They'll keep trying to guilt me into going back, into helping, into sacrificing myself for Eric's comfort. Then we'll keep saying no, as many times as it takes. Doesn't it bother you? That my ex's family keeps contacting me. It bothers me that they're harassing you. But I trust you to maintain your boundaries. And I'll support you in that however you need. That's what real partnership looked like, I realized. Not one person sacrificing while the other benefited, but both people supporting each other's well-being and growth. For years after the breakup, I was thriving in my PhD program when I saw Eric again. This time on social media, where he'd posted about his engagement to a woman named Jennifer. The post was vintage Eric. Finally found someone who understands my vision and supports my dreams unconditionally. So grateful to have a real partner who believes in me. I showed it to James. Look at the language. Supports my dreams unconditionally. He's found another person to exploit. Should you warn her? I don't know her. She might not believe me. And honestly, she's an adult who can make her own choices. But 2 weeks later, Jennifer messaged me directly. Hi Catherine, I hope you don't mind me reaching out. Eric mentioned you were his ex, and I wanted to ask you something. He says you were unsupportive of his business goals, and that's why you broke up. But I've been noticing some patterns that concern me, and I thought maybe you could give me perspective. I called her instead of messaging back. Thank you for talking to me, Jennifer said. I know this is weird. What patterns have you noticed? Well, Eric doesn't have a job. He says he's focusing on his business full-time. But I'm the one paying rent, buying groceries, covering all our expenses. And when I ask about the business, he gets defensive and says I don't understand his vision. How long have you been together? 8 months. And he's already talking about marriage, about how we're soulmates, about how I'm the only person who really believes in him. Jennifer, I'm going to tell you something, and you can do with it what you want. But I dated Eric for 2 years. During that time, I worked 2 jobs to support us financially while he claimed to be building a business. There was no business. There was just Eric's belief that he deserved to be supported while pursuing vague dreams of success, without doing actual work. Oh God! Has he asked you to invest in his ventures yet? He's been hinting that I should. He says it would be a good way to combine our finances, show that we're really committed to building a future together. Don't do it. And honestly, don't marry him. Unless you want to spend your life funding his lifestyle, while he takes credit for your sacrifice. Did he do that to you? For 2 years. And it only ended when I chose to leave. Eric will never choose to change. He feels entitled to other people's labor and money, and he'll find ways to justify that entitlement forever. Jennifer was quiet for a long moment. Thank you for being honest with me. What are you going to do? I think I need to have a serious conversation with Eric about expectations and contributions. 2 months later, Jennifer messaged me again. I broke up with him. You were right about everything. When I asked him to get a job and contribute financially, he said I was being materialistic and didn't believe in his potential. Then he told me I was just like you, rigid and unsupportive. I took that as a compliment. Good for you. He's already posting on social media about finding someone who really appreciates him. I give it 3 months before he's engaged again. She was right. 6 months later, Eric announced his engagement to a woman named Rachel who worked in tech and made six figures. The cycle continued. 5 years after our breakup, James proposed to me on the anniversary of my PhD defense. The ring was modest but chosen with thought. He'd picked it himself, paid for it with his own money, asked me to marry him as an equal partner in a life we'd built together. I said yes without hesitation. My parents were thrilled. James's parents were thrilled. We planned a small wedding focused on celebrating our partnership rather than impressing anyone. 1 month before the wedding, I received a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Catherine? It's Eric." "How did you get this number?" "I have my ways. Listen, I heard you're getting married, and I wanted to reach out. To apologize properly this time, for how things ended between us. I know I wasn't the best partner, and I'm sorry for that." "Okay. And I wanted to warn you, this James guy, do you really know him? Because I did some research, and he's just a PhD student. He doesn't have any real prospects, any big vision. You're going to end up supporting him just like you supported me." The audacity was breathtaking. Eric, James, and I both have full-ride fellowships. We both have our own money, our own careers, our own goals. We split expenses equally. Neither of us is supporting the other financially. But he's just a student. He's a doctoral candidate at a top program who already has job offers lined up. Unlike you, who spent 2 years pretending to build a business while living off my income. I was investing in our future. You were exploiting my labor. And you're still doing it to whoever you're with now. How many fiancés ago was Rachel? 3? 4? That's not. I'm trying to apologize. No, you're trying to undermine my upcoming marriage because you can't stand that I found happiness with someone who actually treats me as an equal. Your apology isn't genuine. It's manipulation. I really have changed. If you'd really changed, you wouldn't have researched my fiancé to find ways to criticize him. You wouldn't have called to plant seeds of doubt. You wouldn't still be trying to control my life years after we broke up. I'm not trying to control you. Yes, you are. Because every time I choose myself over you, it threatens your entire worldview. You need to believe that I was wrong to leave, that I'm unhappy now, that I regret not sacrificing myself for you. Because if I'm happy, if I'm thriving, if I built a better life without you, then it means all your narratives about being underappreciated and misunderstood are lies. Eric was silent for a long moment. I did love you, you know. You loved what I provided. You loved having someone to fund your lifestyle, manage your responsibilities, sacrifice their own dreams so you could pursue yours. That's not love, Eric. That's exploitation. I hope your marriage fails, he said suddenly, the mask dropping completely. I hope James turns out to be using you just like you accused me of doing. I hope you realize you threw away someone who really loved you for someone who just wants your money. James doesn't want my money. He has his own. That's the difference between him and you. He doesn't need someone else to fund his existence because he's actually capable and accomplished on his own merit. I hung up and blocked the number. The wedding was beautiful. Small, intimate, genuine. James and I wrote our own vows focused on partnership, equality, mutual support. No one promised to sacrifice everything for the other. We promised to build together, support together, grow together. During the reception, my maid of honor Sarah pulled me aside. Eric crashed the wedding. What? Well, he didn't crash exactly. He's standing outside the venue. I saw him when I went to my car. He's just standing there, watching. I found James and told him. Do you want me to call security? He asked. No. I'll talk to him. I went outside and found Eric exactly where Sarah had said, standing across the street, staring at the venue where my wedding reception was happening. Eric. He turned, and I saw something in his face I'd never seen before. Genuine devastation. You look happy, he said. I am happy. I could have made you happy. If you'd just given me a chance. If you'd just supported me a little longer, I could have been successful and then I could have given you everything. I didn't need you to give me everything, Eric. I needed you to be a partner. Someone who contributed equally, who sacrificed equally, who built a life with me instead of on top of me. I would have done that. Eventually. No, you wouldn't. Because you fundamentally believe that you're owed support without having to offer it in return. You think your potential is payment enough, that other people should fund your dreams while you ignore theirs. That's not true. It is true. And the proof is that you're here, at my wedding, still trying to make my happiness about you. Still trying to insert yourself into a life you have no part in. Still unable to accept that I chose myself over you and it was the right choice. I've changed. I'm different now. Are you? How many fiancés have you had since me? How many women have you convinced to support you financially while you pursue your vision? How many of them are still with you? Eric had no answer. I'm going back to my wedding now, I said. Stop contacting me. Stop researching my life. Stop showing up at my events. I chose to leave you, and that choice hasn't changed. It's never going to change. You're making a mistake. The only mistake I made was staying with you for 2 years instead of leaving after 2 months. But I've learned from that mistake. I'll never make it again. I walked back into my wedding reception, where James was waiting with a glass of champagne, and a smile that held no manipulation, no expectation, no demand that I sacrifice myself for his comfort. Everything okay? He asked. Everything's perfect. 6 years after choosing myself over Eric, I defended my PhD dissertation to a standing ovation. James was in the audience, proud and supportive, having defended his own dissertation 2 months earlier. We both had job offers from top universities. We were building careers we'd both earned, in a partnership we'd both chosen. I heard through the academic grapevine that Eric had shown up at the public defense and been escorted out when he tried to interrupt during the Q&A session. He's not going to stop, is he? James asked that evening. Probably not. People like Eric can't accept rejection because it forces them to confront their own inadequacy. It's easier to believe I'm the problem than to accept that he was exploitative, and I was right to leave. Do we need to get a restraining order? If he shows up at my actual job, yes. For now, I think he's just struggling with the reality that I'm successful and happy without him. 7 years after the breakup, I was settling into my new position as an assistant professor when I received an email from a journalist. Dr. Wei, I'm writing a piece about women in STEM who overcame significant obstacles to achieve their positions. I'd love to interview you about your journey. During the interview, I talked about dropping out of my master's program in my early 20s, about working multiple jobs, about finally going back to school and completing my education. I didn't mention Eric by name, but I talked about the experience of being in a relationship where my partner expected me to sacrifice my dreams for his. What made you finally leave? The journalist asked. I realized that sacrifice in a relationship should be mutual. If you're the only one giving up your goals, your time, your money, your energy, that's not partnership. That's exploitation. The article was published 3 months later. It went viral on social media, with thousands of women sharing their own stories of sacrificing for partners who gave nothing in return. Eric sent me an email. I know that article was about me. You had no right to publicly humiliate me like that. You've destroyed my reputation. I responded. I didn't name you. If you see yourself in a description of an exploitative partner, that's your conscience, not my attack. He replied. Everyone knows it was me. People are messaging me asking if I'm the guy who made his girlfriend work 2 jobs. This is defamation. I forwarded the email chain to my lawyer, who sent Eric a cease and desist letter. He went quiet after that. 8 years after choosing myself, James and I decided to try for a baby. It took a year, but eventually I got pregnant. Our daughter was born healthy and perfect. And I marveled at the fact that I got to have this motherhood, career, partnership, because I'd refused to sacrifice myself for someone who didn't value me. In my original timeline, I died at 35 without ever having children because Eric kept saying we needed to wait until his business was profitable. He'd stolen not just my 20s, but also my chance at the family I'd wanted. This time, at 31, I had everything I'd ever actually needed. 9 years after the breakup, I was attending a conference in my field when I ran into Amanda. She was speaking on a panel about women in finance. We recognized each other immediately. Catherine Wei, she said. I've followed your career. Very impressive. Thank you. You seem to have done well yourself. I learned from the best. Or rather, I learned from the worst and chose differently. She smiled slightly. Eric contacted me last year asking if my company would invest in his new venture. I looked into it. It was the same vague business plan he'd had a decade ago, just with different buzzwords. Did you invest? God, no. I told him I only invest in people with actual track records of success. He got very angry, said I'd changed, that I used to believe in his potential. Did you? For about 5 minutes. Until you warned me about his pattern. Best advice I ever got. We ended up having dinner together, 2 women who'd both escaped the same manipulator, comparing notes on his tactics. He's engaged again, Amanda told me. 6th fiancé, I think? Or 7th. I lose count. Do you ever warn them? I tried once. She called me a bitter ex trying to sabotage his happiness. They all think they're different, that they're the one who really understands him. Until they realize they're funding his lifestyle while he gives them nothing but potential. Exactly. Amanda raised her glass. To dodging bullets. To choosing ourselves. 10 years after leaving Eric, I received tenure at my university. It was the culmination of years of hard work, research, publications, teaching. Everything I'd built on my own merit, without sacrificing myself for someone else's empty promises. The department threw a celebration. My colleagues congratulated me. James was there with our daughter, both beaming with pride. Eric sent me an email. Congratulations on your tenure. I always knew you were capable of great things. If you'd stayed with me and supported my vision, we could have achieved this success together. I deleted it without responding. There was nothing to say. Eric would never understand that I'd achieved success because I'd left him, not despite leaving him. 11 years after the breakup, Linda died. I heard about it through a mutual acquaintance and sent a sympathy card to the family. Eric called me 3 days later. How dare you send a card? You refused to help when she was sick, you abandoned our family, and now you want to pretend you cared. I did care about Linda, but I wasn't willing to sacrifice my own life to take care of her while you did nothing. I did everything I could. You did the bare minimum while expecting me to do everything else. That was always the pattern, Eric. You do just enough to avoid criticism while everyone else did the actual work. My mother just died and you're attacking me? I'm stating facts. I'm sorry for your loss. I genuinely am. But her death doesn't change the reality of how you operated. You're heartless. I have boundaries. You've always interpreted those as heartlessness because boundaries interfere with your ability to exploit people. He hung up on me. 12 years after choosing myself over Eric, I was exactly the age I'd been when I died in my previous timeline. Except instead of being dead in a hospital corridor, I was alive, thriving, successful, happy. I had a career I'd built through my own work. I had a partner who genuinely valued and supported me. I had a daughter who would grow up seeing what equal partnership looked like. I had a life that was entirely mine, built on my own choices rather than my sacrifice for someone else's comfort. On the anniversary of what would have been my death day, James found me in my home office looking thoughtful. What are you thinking about? About how different my life could have been. If I'd made different choices, said yes to different things, sacrificed myself for the wrong person. Do you regret anything? I regret the time I lost. The 2 years I spent with Eric, working myself to exhaustion while he did nothing. I can't get those years back. But you learned from them. I did. I learned that sacrifice should be mutual. That potential isn't the same as achievement. That choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's survival. James pulled me close. I'm glad you chose yourself. So am I. 13 years after the breakup, I was invited to give a keynote speech at a major conference in my field. The theme was Paths to Success, Overcoming Obstacles. I talked about my journey, dropping out of graduate school, working multiple jobs, realizing I was sacrificing my future for someone who'd never sacrifice for me, making the choice to leave and reclaim my education. The hardest part wasn't leaving, I said to the audience of hundreds. The hardest part was accepting that I deserved better than being someone's ATM and emotional support system. I'd been conditioned to believe that a good partner sacrifices everything for their significant other. It took me 2 years to realize that sacrifice should be mutual, or it's not sacrifice, it's exploitation. After the speech, a young woman approached me crying. "Thank you," she said. "I needed to hear that. I've been supporting my boyfriend financially for 3 years while he works on his music career. He says I don't believe in him when I ask him to get a job. But your speech made me realize, he's not asking me to believe in him. He's asking me to fund him while he does whatever he wants. What are you going to do?" I think I need to have a serious conversation with him about contributions and expectations. 2 months later, she emailed me. I broke up with him. When I asked him to start contributing financially, or at least do the household work while I was the breadwinner, he said I was trying to crush his artistic spirit. Then he moved in with another woman who has a good job. The cycle continues for her now. But I'm free. I'd saved one person. Maybe that was enough. 14 years after leaving Eric, my daughter started asking questions about my past relationships. "Did you date before Daddy?" "I did. I dated someone for 2 years before I met your dad." "What was he like?" I thought about how to explain Eric to a child. How to convey the lesson without traumatizing her. He was someone who expected me to sacrifice my dreams for his. He wanted me to work multiple jobs to support him while he pursued goals that were never really about achievement. They were about having other people validate him. That doesn't sound fair. It wasn't fair. But I didn't realize that at first. I thought I was being a good partner by sacrificing. It took me 2 years to understand that good partnership is mutual, not one-sided. Is that why you and Daddy both work and share chores? Exactly. Your dad and I are equal partners. We both contribute. We both sacrifice when needed. We both support each other's goals. That's what healthy partnership looks like. What happened to the other guy? Last I heard, he was still looking for someone to fund his lifestyle while he pursues vague dreams of success. That's sad. It is sad. But it's also a choice he keeps making. And the consequence of that choice is that he ends up alone, or in relationships with people who eventually realize they're being used. 15 years after the breakup, I was attending my daughter's school play when I saw Eric in the audience. He was alone, looking older and tired, watching the children perform. I almost left, but then I thought, why should I leave? I have every right to be here. He's the one who needs to respect boundaries. After the play, he approached me in the lobby. "Catherine, your daughter was wonderful in the play." "Thank you. She looks just like you." "Eric, what are you doing here?" "My nephew is in the play. I was invited." "Okay. Enjoy the rest of your evening." I turned to leave, but he stopped me. "Wait. Can we talk? Just for a minute." Against my better judgment, I agreed. We went to a quiet corner of the lobby. "I've been thinking about you a lot lately," Eric said. "About us. About what could have been if things had gone differently. Things went exactly as they were going to go. You expected me to sacrifice everything for you. I refused. That's all there was to it. I've changed. I'm not that person anymore." "Eric, you've been saying you've changed for 15 years. But every time I see you or hear about you, you're doing the same things. Finding someone to fund your lifestyle, making grand plans with no follow-through, blaming others when your schemes fail. That's not fair. You don't know anything about my life now. I know you're here alone at a children's play, trying to have a conversation with your ex from 15 years ago instead of moving on with your own life. That tells me everything I need to know. I still think about you. I don't think about you. Except when you force yourself into my space by showing up at my events, contacting me, trying to insert yourself into my life. When you're not actively intruding, you don't exist in my thoughts at all. How can you be so cold? We were together for 2 years. 2 years where I worked myself to exhaustion while you did nothing. 2 years where I sacrificed my education and my future while you pursued vague dreams with no plan. 2 years I'll never get back. I loved you. You loved what I provided. And you're still doing the same thing to other women. That's not love, Eric. That's parasitism. His face flushed with anger. You think you're so much better than me. I don't think I'm better than you. I just know I'm better off without you. And that's all that matters. I walked away from him for what I hoped would be the final time. James was waiting with our daughter. Was that him? That was him. Is he going to be a problem? No. He's just a sad man who never learned that other people aren't responsible for funding his ego. 16 years after leaving Eric, I was promoted to full professor. It was the pinnacle of academic achievement, the result of decades of hard work and dedication. Eric sent me a congratulatory email with a request. I'm working on a new business venture, and I was hoping you could invest. Given your success, I thought you might want to support innovation and entrepreneurship. I responded, Eric, I haven't spoken to you in years except when you force contact. I have no interest in your business ventures, your life, or maintaining any relationship with you. This is the last time I'll respond to any communication from you. Further contact will be considered harassment. He replied, I can't believe after all these years you're still bitter about our breakup. I'm trying to extend an olive branch, and you're being hostile. I blocked his email address and filed the exchange with my lawyer, just in case. 17 years after choosing myself, I was living the life I'd died without in my previous timeline. Career, family, happiness, fulfillment. All of it built on the foundation of refusing to sacrifice myself for someone who didn't value me. I thought sometimes about the Catherine who'd died at 35, exhausted and used up, having given everything for Eric's dreams while he built a life with someone else. That Catherine had believed sacrifice was love. That putting Eric's needs first was partnership. That working herself to death was devotion. This Catherine knew better. Knew that real love was mutual. That real partnership was equal. That real devotion went both ways. I'd been reborn with knowledge of what my sacrifice had cost me. And I'd used that knowledge to choose differently. Eric had been shocked when I refused to play the role he'd assigned me. Shocked when I prioritized my own education over his comfort. Shocked when I built a successful life without him. He'd expected me to sacrifice everything, because that's what I'd done in the timeline he didn't know about. He'd expected me to fund his lifestyle, defer my dreams, work myself to exhaustion while he pursued vague visions of success. Instead, I'd said no. And that single word, backed up by consistent boundaries and self-respect, had changed everything. 18 years after the breakup, I was invited to speak at MIT, my alma mater, about women in STEM and the importance of maintaining boundaries in relationships. The auditorium was packed with students, faculty, professionals. I told my story again, refined over years of speaking engagements, about learning that sacrifice should be mutual, or it's not sacrifice at all. During the Q&A, a young woman asked, how do you know if you're being supportive or being exploited? Ask yourself, is this sacrifice mutual? Are we both giving up things for each other's benefit? Or am I the only one sacrificing while they're the only one benefiting? If it's the latter, that's exploitation. But what if they have potential? What if they just need support to achieve great things? Potential is great, but it's not payment. If someone expects you to fund their potential with your actual labor, your actual money, your actual sacrifice, while they contribute nothing but vague promises of future success, that's not partnership. That's parasitism. The audience applauded. The young woman nodded, looking thoughtful. After the event, she approached me. Thank you. My boyfriend is a musician. I've been supporting us financially for 2 years while he pursues his music. He says he'll pay me back when he makes it big. But hearing you talk, I realize he might never make it big. And even if he does, he's not going to pay me back because he doesn't see my sacrifice as debt. He sees it as my obligation. What will you do? I think I need to have a serious conversation about contributions and expectations. And if he can't meet me halfway, I need to leave. 3 months later, she emailed me. I left him. He said I was sabotaging his dreams. But I realized his dreams were costing me mine. Thank you for helping me see clearly. I'd saved another person. The ripple effects of my own escape continued to spread. 19 years after leaving Eric, I was diagnosed with a minor health issue that required surgery and recovery time. James took a leave from work to care for me and our daughter during my recovery. You don't have to do this, I told him. We could hire help. I want to do this. You're my partner. When you need support, I support you. Just like you support me when I need it. That was the difference between James and Eric. James saw partnership as mutual. When one person needed help, the other stepped up, knowing it would be reciprocated when roles reversed. Eric had seen partnership as one person, me, doing everything while the other person, him, benefited from everything. During my recovery, I had time to think about the two timelines I'd lived. In one, I'd sacrificed everything and died exhausted and alone. In this one, I'd refused to sacrifice and built a life full of genuine love and partnership. The difference wasn't the people in my life, it was my willingness to choose myself. 20 years after the breakup, I retired from active teaching to focus on research and writing. My career had been everything I'd hoped for, successful, fulfilling, impactful. Eric, I heard through the grapevine, was on his 10th failed business venture and his 8th broken engagement. He was 53 years old and still looking for someone to fund his lifestyle, while he pursued dreams he had no intention of actually working toward. Some people never learned. Some people never changed. Some people spent their entire lives believing they were entitled to other people's sacrifice without offering anything real in return. I'd learned. I'd changed. I'd built a life based on mutual respect and genuine partnership. That was the victory. Not that Eric had failed, but that I had succeeded by refusing to be part of his pattern. 21 years after choosing myself, my daughter graduated from college with honors. She'd grown up watching James and me build an equal partnership, and she'd learned from our example. When she introduced us to her boyfriend, the first thing she said was, "He has his own career, his own goals, his own money. We support each other equally." I smiled. That's exactly how it should be. You taught me that, Mom. You taught me that sacrifice should be mutual, that partnership should be equal, that choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary. After the graduation ceremony, James and I were walking across campus when I saw Eric one final time. He was sitting alone on a bench, looking at his phone, aged and tired and fundamentally unchanged from the man I'd left 21 years ago. He looked up and saw me. For a moment, our eyes met across the quad. I felt nothing. No anger, no regret, no vindication. Just a distant recognition that he'd once been part of my life, and now he wasn't. I turned away and kept walking with James, toward our car, toward our life, toward the future I'd built by refusing to sacrifice myself for someone who'd never valued me. Eric called out, "Catherine." I didn't stop. I didn't look back. I just kept walking. Because that's what boundaries looked like. Not dramatic confrontations or angry speeches. Just the quiet, consistent choice to keep moving forward without the people who wanted to pull you backward. 22 years after the breakup, I published a memoir about my journey from sacrifice to self-respect. The book became a bestseller, resonating with thousands of women who'd experienced similar dynamics. Eric tried to sue me for defamation, claiming the book was about him. The lawsuit was dismissed because I'd never named him. And his lawyer pointed out that his attempt to claim the book was about him was essentially admitting to the behavior I'd described. The publicity from the lawsuit attempt only made the book more popular. Women wrote to me sharing their own stories of escaping exploitative relationships, of learning to set boundaries, of choosing themselves over partners who demanded sacrifice without offering partnership. "Your book saved my life," one woman wrote. "I was working 3 jobs to support my husband's startup. Reading your story made me realize I was living your past. I left him. I'm building my own career now. I'm happy. That made everything worth it. The years of sacrifice in my first timeline, the effort to change things in this one, the ongoing work of maintaining boundaries and choosing myself. I'd been reborn with knowledge of what my sacrifice had cost me. And I'd used that knowledge to save not just myself, but hundreds of other women who recognized their own stories in mine." 23 years after leaving Eric, I was giving a speech at a domestic violence prevention conference when a woman in the audience stood up during Q&A. "I'm Eric's current girlfriend," she said. "He doesn't know I'm here. But I've been reading your book, and I see our relationship in every page. I wanted to thank you for writing it. And I wanted to tell you that I'm leaving him. Today. Right now." The audience applauded. I felt tears sting my eyes. Do you have a safe place to go? I asked. Yes. My sister's place. I already packed my things and gave notice at the apartment. I just wanted to hear you speak before I made it official. You're very brave. No. You were brave. I'm just finally smart enough to learn from your example. After the conference, we had coffee. Her name was Michelle, and she was the 9th woman Eric had gotten engaged to in 23 years. He told me you were bitter and jealous, Michelle said. That you'd tried to sabotage his success because you couldn't handle his potential. Did you believe him? At first. But then I started noticing the patterns you described in your book. The expectation that I'd fund everything. The vague business plans with no actual work. The way he'd get angry when I asked about contributions or timelines. What made you realize you needed to leave? He asked me to take out a loan against my house to invest in his new venture. When I hesitated, he said I didn't really love him, that I was just like you, materialistic and unsupportive. That's when I knew. If refusing to risk my financial security made me like you, then being like you was exactly what I needed to be. Michelle left Eric that day. He tried to contact me, raging about how I'd poisoned his girlfriend against him, how I was obsessed with ruining his life, how I needed to let go of the past. I forwarded his messages to my lawyer without responding. 24 years after choosing myself, James and I celebrated our 20th wedding anniversary. 2 decades of genuine partnership, mutual support, equal sacrifice. Do you ever think about your ex? James asked over anniversary dinner. Only when he forces himself into my awareness. Otherwise, no. He really can't let go, can he? He can't let go of the narrative that I wronged him by refusing to sacrifice myself. Because if I was right to leave, then he has to confront the reality that he's exploitative and entitled. It's easier to believe I'm the villain than to accept that he's the problem. Does it bother you that he's still trying to contact you? It bothers me that there's no legal recourse to make him stop completely. But otherwise, no. His obsession with me is his problem, not mine. I'm glad you chose yourself all those years ago. So am I. Because choosing myself led me to you. And this life. And everything we've built together. 25 years after the breakup, I was 78 years old, 43 years past the age I'd died in my previous timeline. Every year I'd lived past 35 felt like a gift. Every achievement, every moment of happiness, every connection with the people I loved. All of it was possible because I'd refused to sacrifice myself for someone who didn't value me. Eric had died 2 years earlier at 76, alone in a nursing home. He'd never married, never built lasting relationships, never achieved the success he'd always believed was his destiny. I felt sad when I heard about his death. Not for the loss of him. I'd mourned that relationship 25 years ago, but for the waste of a life spent believing other people owed him everything while he owed nothing in return. At his funeral, which I didn't attend, apparently only a handful of people showed up. No wife, no children, no close friends. Just a few distant relatives and former colleagues who felt obligated to pay respects. I'd feared, in my previous timeline, that refusing to sacrifice for Eric would mean ending up alone. That choosing myself was selfish and would be punished with isolation. But the opposite had proven true. Choosing myself had led me to genuine partnership with James, to a daughter who understood healthy relationships, to a career I'd built through my own merit, to a life full of people who valued me. Eric had spent his life demanding sacrifice from others while offering nothing real in return. And he'd ended up truly alone. The universe had a sense of irony, but also a sense of justice. On what would have been our 47th wedding anniversary if I'd married Eric in my previous timeline, I was sitting with James in our garden, watching our grandchildren play. What are you thinking about? James asked. About how different my life could have been. If I'd made different choices, said yes to the wrong person, sacrificed myself for someone who didn't deserve it. Do you ever regret anything? I regret the 2 years I lost with Eric in my early 20s. But I don't regret leaving. That was the best decision I ever made. Better than saying yes to me? Saying no to Eric made it possible to say yes to you. So they're connected. The best decision was really 2 decisions. No to exploitation, yes to partnership. James took my hand. I'm grateful every day that you chose yourself, because it meant you could choose us. So am I. As the sun set over our garden and our grandchildren laughed and James held my hand, I thought about the Catherine who'd died at 35, exhausted and alone, having sacrificed everything for Eric's dreams. She'd never known this peace. She'd never experienced this joy. She'd never understood that choosing yourself wasn't selfish. It was the foundation of everything good that could follow. I'd been given a second chance, and I'd used it to refuse the sacrifice that had killed me before. Eric had been shocked. He'd expected me to play the same role, make the same sacrifices, fund the same dreams. Instead, I'd said no. And that refusal had saved my life and built my happiness. That was the truth I'd learned across 2 timelines. The person who demands your sacrifice will never appreciate it. The person who deserves your partnership will never demand it. I'd sacrificed for my husband and found it was for his lover. I'd been reborn and refused. And in that refusal, I'd found everything I'd been looking for: love, partnership, respect, happiness, a life lived on my own terms. Eric had been shocked by my refusal, but I'd been liberated by it. And that liberation had made all the difference.